The snow started at 4 in the afternoon on Christmas Eve. Big, slow flakes that drifted past the grimy windows of the Speedy Mart on 9th and Mercer, like someone upstairs had torn open a feather pillow and decided the whole city needed softening. Jason Harper watched them while he restocked the cigarette carousel for the third time that night. His fingers raw from cardboard cuts, the cheap fluorescent lights humming overhead the way they had every night for the past 11 months. The radio behind the counter kept trying to be cheerful. Bing Crosby, Nat King Cole, that Mariah Carey song everyone pretended to hate. But the holiday cheer felt like mockery when your own heart had been buried in 2 tiny white coffins. He had promised himself he would not cry at work again. Last year, 3 weeks before the crash, he had been the dad who wore a Santa hat to the grocery store and let Lily and Emma ride in the cart together, standing up, holding hands, shrieking with laughter every time he spun them past the bakery case. This year, he was the quiet man in the faded hoodie who never smiled, who knew exactly how much every brand of whiskey cost because he had priced comfort too many times, who startled cashiers by paying for the next person's coffee when they were short $1 because he knew what it felt like to be short of everything that mattered. At 11:03 p.m., the last customer left, an old woman buying a single candy bar and a lottery ticket she called My Christmas Miracle. Jason locked the door, turned the sign to closed, and began the closing routine on autopilot. Mop the sticky spots by the soda fountain, empty the coffee burners, count the till twice because his hands still shook on bad nights. Tonight was a bad night. Tonight was the worst night. 1 year ago, at this exact hour, he had been carrying a sleeping Emma on his shoulder while Lily walked beside him holding his hand, both of them warm in footy pajamas, on their way home from the church living nativity petting zoo. Sarah had been humming "O Holy Night" under her breath, her arm looped through his, their breath making little clouds in the air. They had stopped under the streetlight so the girls could wave at baby Jesus in the manger scene. Jason could still see the glow on their faces, the way Lily's curls stuck out from under her knit hat like springs, the way Emma's thumb never left her mouth when she was sleepy. He had taken a picture with his phone. It was the lock screen. He could not bring himself to change, even after the screen cracked the night he threw the phone at the hospital wall. He finished closing, set the alarm, and stepped out into the alley to take the trash. The cold hit him like a slap. The snow was already 6 inches deep and falling faster now, thick enough to blur the streetlights into halos. He dragged the bags to the dumpster, muscles aching from the 12-hour shift. And that was when he saw the dolls in the window of the closed pawn shop across the alley. 2 blonde baby dolls with pink dresses, exactly the ones Lily and Emma had pointed to in the catalog 2 years ago when they were barely 2, shouting, "Baby, want baby," in perfect stereo. His shop had a hand-lettered sign, "Christmas Eve Special, $9.99 each." Jason stared at them for a long time. Then he used his key to open the register again, took $20 from his own wallet, money meant for rent, and left the bills under the keyboard with a note that said, "For the dolls in the window. Merry Christmas, Mike." Mike would understand. Mike had lost a son to leukemia 5 years ago and never decorated the shop anymore either. He crossed the alley through the swirling snow, pried the security gate up just enough to reach in and pulled the dolls out by their stiff plastic arms. They were cheap, the kind with eyes that closed when you laid them down, but they were the closest he would ever come to giving his daughters what they had asked Santa for. He tucked them into a white plastic bag that still smelled faintly of motor oil and lottery tickets, and started the long walk home. The city was almost empty. A single city bus hissed past, chains clinking on its tires. Somewhere a church bell tolled midnight. Jason's boots crunched through the fresh snow, the only sound in the world. He took the shortcut behind St. Agnes, past the life-sized nativity that Father Tom set up every year with real hay and a spotlight on the manger. The plastic baby Jesus glowed soft blue, and the wooden Mary had a gentle smile painted on that had comforted Jason more than once on nights when the cemetery felt too far away. He almost didn't look into the alley beside the church. He never looked. The alley was where people abandoned things. Couches with the stuffing ripped out. Bags of clothes that had given up. Christmas trees already browning on December 26th. Tonight something made him turn his head. There was a pile of trash bags half covered in snow, and on top of a flattened refrigerator box lay two small shapes curled together like commas. Pale blue pajamas with yellow moons and white stars, the exact pajamas Sarah had bought on clearance at Target because they were too cute to leave on the rack. One of the shapes had kicked a foot free. Tiny toes, blue with cold, wiggled faintly. Jason's heart stopped. The plastic bag slipped from his numb fingers, and the dolls rolled out like pale ghosts into the snow. He took one step, then another, until he was close enough to see the curls. Chestnut curls, wild and tangled with bits of leaf and snow. Two identical faces smudged with dirt and tears, eyelashes clumped, rosebud mouths open in sleep. The left cheeks pressed together the way they always slept, forehead to forehead, arms wrapped tight, so that even in dreams they held on to each other. The sleeve of the left pajama top had ridden up, revealing a small shoulder blade and the unmistakable birthmark, a perfect 5-point star the size of a dime. Jason made a sound that was not a word, not a scream, not anything human. He fell forward into the snow on his knees. "Lily," he whispered, the name tasting like blood and miracle. "Emma." The girl on the right stirred first. Emma. He knew it was Emma because she always slept with her left thumb near her mouth. She blinked, confused, eyes the color of winter sky focusing slowly on his face. Recognition hit her like sunrise. "Daddy?" The voice was hoarse, tiny, the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. Lily woke at the sound, rubbed her eyes with both fists the way she had since she was a baby. And then both girls were sitting up, staring at him with huge eyes, trembling. Jason couldn't breathe. He reached out with shaking hands and touched them, cheeks first, then curls, then the cold little fingers that immediately grabbed his and held on, as if they had been waiting a lifetime for this exact moment. "Daddy, cold," Emma whimpered, teeth chattering. He didn't think, he simply acted. Coat off, wrapped around both of them, lifted them together, one under each arm, the way he used to when they were babies and he carried them from the car after falling asleep on the ride home from Grandma's. They weighed almost nothing and everything at the same time. Their legs dangled, bare feet already turning purple. He ran, 6 blocks through the silent snow, lungs burning, tears freezing on his lashes, the girls clinging to his neck, with surprising strength, whispering "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy" like a prayer. The apartment stairwell smelled of old grease and pine cleaner. He took the steps 2 at a time, fumbled the key twice, finally got the door open and slammed it behind him with his foot. The single room was cold. He kept the heat low to save money. But it was home. He fell to his knees in the middle of the floor and just held them, rocking, sobbing, kissing every inch of their faces, their hair, their icy toes. They let him, confused but trusting, small hands patting his wet cheeks. Daddy crying, Lily observed solemnly. Happy crying, he managed, voice shredded. Daddy's so happy. He carried them to the bathroom, turned the bath on as hot as it would go, steam filling the tiny space. While the tub filled, he peeled off the filthy pajamas. They were the exact ones from the crash night, he was sure of it. The little tag inside the collar still had the faded Sharpie S for Sarah had written, so the daycare could tell whose was whose. Their skin was pale, goose-pimpled, but unmarked. No seatbelt bruises, no surgical scars. Nothing, just 2 perfect little girls who should not exist. Into the water they went, both at once, because he couldn't bear to separate them even for a minute. He knelt on the cracked linoleum, fully dressed, sleeves rolled up, washing their hair with his own 2-in-1 shampoo that smelled like cheap pine trees. They giggled when the bubbles got too big and pocked on their noses, the exact same giggle that used to echo through the little blue house on Maplewood Lane. He cried harder. He wrapped them in his only clean towels, threadbare but warm, carried them to the couch that doubled as his bed, and sat there holding them while they looked around the tiny apartment with huge, solemn eyes. "Where, Mommy?" Emma asked, thumb creeping toward her mouth. "Where our house?" Lily added, lower lip trembling. Jason's heart cracked clean in half. He kissed their damp curls and told them the gentlest lie he could manage. "Mommy's with the angels tonight, babies. But she sent you back to Daddy for Christmas. And our new house is small, but it's ours, and we're together now. That's what matters." They accepted this with the beautiful logic of 3-year-olds who have seen too much, but still believe daddies can fix anything. They snuggled closer, yawning, and within minutes were asleep against his chest, breathing in perfect unison the way they always had. Jason did not sleep. He counted their breaths, 87 a minute when calm, felt the weight of their heads, one on each collarbone, memorized the new thinness of their wrists, the way Lily's left foot still turned in slightly when she relaxed. At some point he realized he was still wearing his wet coat and boots, snow melting into puddles on the floor, but he didn't care. He was terrified to move, terrified this was a cruel dream and morning would steal them again. At 3:17 a.m., he reached for his phone with one hand, careful not to jostle them, and dialed 911. The dispatcher thought he was drunk or prank calling until he sobbed out, "They're alive. My daughters are alive. Please send someone." He hung up and immediately called the one person he knew would come no matter the hour. Detective Marcus Ramirez, the officer who had stood with him in the freezing rain the night of the crash, who had carried 2 empty, blood-soaked car seats out of the mangled minivan while Jason screamed on a stretcher. Ramirez arrived 23 minutes later in flannel pajama pants, tucked into boots, coat thrown over a thermal shirt, badge clipped crookedly to his belt. He took one look at the two sleeping toddlers curled in Jason's lap and went ashen. Madre de Dios, he whispered, crossing himself, though Jason knew he hadn't been to Mass in 20 years. That's not possible. Touch them, Jason begged, voice raw. Tell me I'm not crazy. Ramirez knelt slowly, like a man approaching an altar, and gently brushed a curl from Lily's forehead. His hand shook. I pulled their blankets out of that van myself, Jason. I saw. His voice broke. I saw what was left. Jason was crying again. Test them, DNA, anything. Just make it official so no one can take them away again. Ramirez nodded once, sharp. All business now. He radioed for an evidence tech, woke a judge at home, called in favors that would probably cost him promotions. The tech arrived with a kit and took cheek swabs from the sleeping girls, so gently they didn't stir. Jason surrendered the toothbrush he had never been able to throw away. The one with Sarah's blood, still faintly rusting the bristles from the morning she'd chipped the tooth on a coffee mug, and laughed about needing to be more careful now that she had little girls who copied everything. Old evidence, never discarded. I'll have prelim results in 4 hours, the tech promised, eyes wet. Judge Carter signed the emergency order. Whatever those tests say, no one's moving these kids tonight. 4 hours. Jason sat on the floor with his back against the couch. Lily and Emma draped across his chest like living blankets, and counted every second. When the sky outside began to pale from black to pewter, the girls woke up hungry. He made oatmeal, the only thing in the cupboard, stirred in too much sugar, and the last of the good vanilla extract Sarah had bought for Christmas cookies they never got to bake. They ate 3 bowls each, pink tongues licking the spoons clean, then asked, for the star story, please, Daddy, the one with the lost babies. So he told it, voice cracking, changing the ending on the spot so the daddy star searched the entire earth for a whole year, never giving up, until he found his little stars sleeping in an alley on Christmas Eve, and carried them home forever. They clapped when he finished, delighted, and Emma declared, "That's us. We fell and you catched us." At 6:42 a.m. on Christmas morning, Ramirez called back. His voice was hoarse from crying. 99.999997%, Jason. It's them. It's really them. Jason dropped the phone. The room tilted. He sat down hard on the linoleum while Lily and Emma looked at him with identical worried expressions. Daddy okay? Lily asked, patting his cheek with sticky fingers. Daddy's never been better in his whole life, he whispered, and pulled them close again. The next 12 hours were chaos. Didn't show some respect on the Savior's birthday. Inside the apartment, Jason never let the girls out of his sight. He dressed them in his own t-shirts that hung to their ankles like gowns, tied with dish towels for belts. A paramedic checked them over and declared them malnourished, but miraculously healthy. No broken bones, no infections, lungs clear despite the cold night. A pediatrician who saw the story on the morning news showed up with a bag of clothes in the right size, donated by her own daughters who were grown. She examined them gently while they hid behind Jason's legs, pronouncing them perfect little miracles who just need groceries and love, mostly love. By noon, the apartment smelled like pine from the real tree someone delivered, like pizza from the 20 boxes a local restaurant sent over, like baby shampoo and hope. Neighbors Jason had never spoken to brought diapers, sippy cups, a high chair someone found in their attic. A firefighter carried in a twin bed still in plastic wrap. His own kids had outgrown it years ago. Someone set up a tiny nativity scene on the windowsill with a note that said, "Now, the Holy Family is complete again." Jason moved through it all in a daze, answering questions in monosyllables, signing papers with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. When the child services supervisor finally sat him down with a thick file and a cup of coffee strong enough to wake the dead, she laid out the nightmare in calm, clinical detail. The night of the crash, the minivan had been T-boned so hard it spun 3 times before wrapping around a telephone pole. First responders found Sarah deceased at the scene. Jason was unconscious in the front seat. The back seat looked like no one could have survived. The car seats were empty and soaked in blood later determined to be Sarah's that had sprayed through the shattered windshield. The paramedics assumed the children had been ejected. They searched the ditch, the field, the roadside for 50 yards in every direction. Nothing. The girls were pronounced dead at 9:47 p.m., along with their mother. But they weren't dead. A second ambulance from a different company covering a different zone had arrived minutes later. Its crew found 2 tiny girls crawling out from under the wreckage where they had been thrown clear but sheltered by the collapsed roof and a miracle of physics. Barely breathing, hypothermic, concussed, but alive. They were airlifted to St. Mary's Trauma Center, 40 miles away, the hospital that handled pediatric critical cases. While Jason was taken to County General with the first wave, no one cross-referenced. No one realized the 2 DOA juveniles and the 2 unidentified critical toddlers were the same children. At St. Mary's, they were Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 for 6 weeks, kept sedated while their brains healed. When they finally woke up, barely verbal, asking for daddy and mama, the social worker assigned to the case wrote the last name down phonetically as Hopper, because that's what it sounded like through tears and trauma. By the time anyone fought to check missing persons reports, the Harper girls had already been declared dead and buried. The file was closed. The Hopper girls were declared abandoned and entered the foster system. 11 months, 6 placements. The first foster mother was elderly and overwhelmed by twins. The second had too many other kids. The third reported they cried every night for daddy, and she couldn't sleep. The fourth kept them 3 months until her husband lost his job, and they couldn't afford the subsidy. The fifth was investigated for neglect after neighbors heard constant crying. The sixth, the one they ran away from 2 days ago, had a boyfriend who yelled and slammed doors. Lily and Emma, who had learned to unlatch windows in previous homes, waited until everyone was asleep, pushed a chair to the kitchen door, and walked out into the snow, wearing only their moon and star pajamas, because those were Daddy's favorite. They walked for hours, following Christmas lights, asking strangers if they knew where Daddy lived. Most ignored them, One gave them a candy cane. Eventually, they curled up in the alley behind the church because the nativity scene reminded them of the night Daddy took them to see baby Jesus. And they fell asleep waiting for him to find them the way he always did when they played hide and seek. Jason listened to all of it, with his daughters in his lap, kissing their curls every few minutes to make sure they were real. When the supervisor finished, she was crying too. "We failed them," she said. "We failed you. I don't know how to make that right." Jason looked down at Lily and Emma, who had fallen asleep again mid-story, clutching their new dolls. "You can't bring back the year I lost," he said quietly. "But you can make sure I never lose another second. Give me my daughters, officially, today." She did. Emergency custody signed on the spot. Permanent reinstatement of parental rights scheduled for the 26th, when the courts reopened. The county would pay for therapy, medical care, whatever they needed. Someone whispered the word lawsuit, and Jason shut it down with a look. He didn't want money. He wanted mornings of oatmeal with too much sugar. He wanted bedtime stories and bath bubbles and the sound of little feet running to greet him when he came home. He wanted to watch them grow up. By nightfall, the crowds had gone home. The tree lights glowed soft gold. The apartment smelled like pizza and pine and baby lotion. Jason gave the girls their first real bath in their new home. Bubbles up to their chins, rubber ducks a very one had brought, then dressed them in matching red pajamas someone had found with reindeer on them. He made hot chocolate with marshmallows that dissolved into sweet clouds. They sat on the couch under the big quilt Sarah's mother had sewn the year they got married, the one with the wedding ring pattern in blues and creams. And he read them the night before Christmas, twice, because they begged for more Santa words. When they finally fell asleep, dolls tucked under their chins, Jason carried them to the new twin bed someone had assembled while he wasn't looking. He tucked them in side by side, the way they had slept since the day they came home from the hospital as preemies. So small, the nurses called them the 2Ps. He kissed their foreheads 20 times each, 10 for the year he missed, 10 for the years to come. And he sat on the floor beside the bed and watched them breathe until the sun came up again on December 26th, painting the room pink and gold. Outside, the city woke to headlines screaming, "Miracle on 9th Street," and pictures of a sobbing father carrying his daughters out of the snow. Inside, Jason Harper held the hands of two little girls who had fallen from heaven twice and been caught both times by love too stubborn to let go. And somewhere, high above, in the vast quiet after the storm, two bright stars that had wandered too far, flickered once in pure joy, then settled peacefully back into their places, shining brighter than they ever had before, because they knew the daddy star had kept his promise after all. He had searched the entire earth. He had never stopped believing, and on Christmas morning, in a tiny apartment that suddenly held the whole universe, he carried his little girls home forever. 10,000 words would never be enough to tell the whole story, but every year on Christmas Eve, Jason tried anyway. He sat his daughters, now 4, then 5, then 10, then 15, on the couch under that same wedding ring quilt. And he told them about the night 2 fallen stars waited in the snow for their daddy to find them. And every year Lily and Emma added their own parts, how cold their toes were, how they knew he would come, because daddies always find their little girls, how the dolls he brought were the best presents in the whole world. And every year, when the story ended, they looked up at the sky through the window and waved at two particular stars that always seemed to shine brightest above their little apartment. Because some stories don't end. They just become bedtime truths, too beautiful for anything but forever.